Welcome back, everybody. I had to take a short break from posting videos. I was doing roughly every day to every other day, kind of over the last week or two. But I needed to take a break because, for those of you who don't know, I cover the NFL for a living, and we just had a big weekend of playoff games, and so didn't have much time for archetypes and really doing deep dive stuff that I normally like to do. But I needed to get you guys some form of content because you deserve it, and so this is a quick video of essentially my favorite cards in Fearsome Rivals. This set was so good in terms of the way it looked. Every single archetype is fun, regardless of power level. The alt arts looked amazing. The SLRs to SPRs. I've been a really big fan of them making SPRs out of commons and uncommons and stuff like that, because it allows for almost everybody to kind of have these pushed cards that they believe deserve an SPR on top of the base SR still being also worth something. Some are still going to be under a dollar or what have you, but it does add value to, again, those cards because there's only one playable version of it. So for numerous reasons, this set rocks, and I could probably make a video like this that goes much longer than this one is going to, because of so many cool cards that came out. But this is kind of a little bit of a condensed version where we're going to go over, again, some of my favorite cards. And look at this little dash mark here that apparently I didn't edit out for some reason. But anyway, these are some of the coolest cards in the set, and I'm going to explain to you why. So here we go. So the best concept rare, and I should start off also with, Bandai did a really good job of not making any of these concept rares so powerful that they're staples similar to a lot of the ones that came in the last set. For the most part, these are win more cards, and you shouldn't feel bad for not having them. There are some that are definitely stronger than others, but for the most part, these are not cards that are going to make or break your deck, whether it's a new one or an old one or anything like that. But I'm going to start with the blue concept rare because I think this is the best one. A lot of these concept rares revolve around removal, and this is the only one that has any form of getting rid of barrier cards. Now, it is 4 or less barrier cards, so there is a cap on exactly how good this card is. But for blue, which struggles with barrier removal, and specifically in a color that doesn't do much early, being able to now combat low-costed barrier cards on essentially turn 2, as some of these cards come down, again, Sin, Shenron 4 cost. This is absolutely huge. And specifically, there aren't much more important, if at all, as nearly as important as Sin 4 they need to get rid of in regards to this card, but the fact that it exists is still huge for the color nonetheless. So I do think this is the best concept rare. Barrier removal is so understated, especially in this color, that I think that alone makes this the best. It's earlier barrier removal, hits cards that may really derail your deck and what it wants to do before you get a chance to really set up or do anything. So the fact that this hits that is awesome. Why I love these concept rares, and this kind of goes for more of them, essentially all of them, in the way that they all play, right? You play it the turn after it is actually paid for, right? So you pay 1, you put this face up in your Z deck, you draw. If you're the green one, your opponent discards, and then it does something, some form of removal. So the way I worded this, a value card that is played earlier but remains later into the game, is that most cards, if you think about it, are played and then they're removed within the turn cycle. What this allows you to do is to pay for a card, get its on play, activate main, whatever value, the draw, the removal immediately. But if you think about it, you're missing on a 25k swing very early, but playing it on turn 2, essentially going second, right, because your opponent needs 2 energy. This swing probably doesn't matter because, 1, your opponent is probably going to take it, and it's probably a life that they were going to end up taking anyway because of a pick down a 6 or 5 awakening clause, right? So you miss out on the swing of the turn it's played. But that essentially is such a nothing burger because of how little value that swing actually brings to you. If you do swing, you give your opponent a card, which is something to charge or make a decision with later. And so instead, you are gaining value for yourself and not trading value at all with your opponent. And then on your, essentially, would this be your opponent needs 2 or less life, your turn 3 going second, or turn 3 going first, depending on just, however you start the game. You're free playing for this turn, right? A 25k body. So when this comes down to swing for the first time, more than likely that swing matters more. Your opponent's at 6-5, maybe even 4, depending on how crazy your turn 2 is or whatever in terms of how much you can aggro. So you get this free 25k swing at a much more important time later into the game where these swings that are 25k plus matter more. Like, I think that's a really cool card design. And when I think of it this way, I was like, yo, this is actually kind of insane. It's, again, not a card that I believe is a staple or will be a staple, but feels really good in certain situations. And then the more I think about its like concept, pun intended, its structure, its what you can do with it and how it helps your deck, I think is just really cool. And then a last bit of a positive here is it's a 6-cost Janemba for the BT22 archetype. That was like the Z extra coming in and out, playing a 6-cost once per turn on a player's turn. There's like the barrier around the check-in station field card. That deck got anniversary box support, I want to say 2 years ago, and because it very much needed it. It was such a bad deck. It came out with Aegis Gogeta, and that power level imbalance is insane. So this is technically support for that. Not that you ever would actually play it via the effects and stuff, because you're already paying 1 for the check-in station to play a 6-cost Janemba, but this is, you don't get any of this other effect. It's just that the other Janembas are 19Ks, and this is essentially something you can play, again, on either opponent's turn with 25K power. But again, you probably wouldn't do it. Still, it's a cool bit of legacy support in just that little niche way. Next card. This card is awesome as well, hence why any of these cards are on this list. So Fuse Zamasu and Dying Absolute God. This is a 2 black energy barrier removal for black that draws. Now I know what you're thinking, there's Cumber 7 already, and that is a very good card. It's why it's shoehorned into every single black deck no matter what the archetype is. That's great. But black that is inherently a very non-defensive deck needs other ways to survive without handing it like an actual floodgate, like an E-Dance, Android 17, or what have you, because the color is inherently too offensive in most of these black sand decks, right? So what they gave it is a 2 energy indestructible blocker that draws and warps a card through barrier. Very, very good card. Again, with black, you utilize a lot of free negate. So the token negate, the Gohan SGR, maybe Protector, which I still never feel super good for me to play, but I understand why people play it. A lot of free stuff, or very, very cheap, or Petrification. But again, that's an energy and a card out of hand, but still very, very good. So they give you an indestructible blocker that, like, if you're not playing red that can minus 25k, which this is, if you're not specifically playing a blue deck that cited Trunks, a yellow deck that has specifically skill negation, this card survives, and you gain value over and over with it. And then if you're a black deck that does play enough unisons where you can use the activate main down here at the bottom, which is send 2 black unisons from your drop to your warp to restand it, it can also swing and be a blocker on defense. But turn after turn, as long as this card remains, you are able as a black deck with little defense to always stop the biggest threat of that turn. And then what you do let through, if you don't have the negates or whatever else, you're comboing out of the smallest things and retaining that much more value. Because if you're only having to combo out of 20s and this stops the big 35 double triple whatever that a lot of these black decks can put out, then that is so much resource saved. It cannot be understated. This is an awesome card, especially for black control decks. Now, some black aggro decks, for the most part, probably aren't like keen to play this unless it's a side deck card for specific matchups. But 2 energy is a lot in a color that can attack you for like many times for like no energy, and 1 energy and 2 energy, like those it does so much for that amount of energy paid, excuse me. But for black control decks, so unfortunately Hatch, maybe a little Fu, Meki, some of these decks I haven't played in a while, Cumber, but like there are places for this card in underutilized black decks who maybe aren't super aggro that can then turn their identity and lean in a different direction if given enough of the right tools. And I think this is a really good card to help some decks maybe start leaning in that right direction or different direction. I'm not going to be an aggro to mid-range anymore. I'm going to play a little bit more control and tempo, and then pick my moments a little bit better about when I'm going to kill you and commit to it, because I just have like that much more resources saved thanks to this card. So again, this card rocks. It's so big for a lot of black decks, and another card that makes you really think back to older decks and go like, what can this immediately upgrade and what new strategies can I use with it? So this card rocks. Another generic, so this is a red card. I should start off. This is 3-man Kamehameha. It's the SR extra card for new red Krillin. And something that my local group figured out much later after the set released is that if you read this card, and specifically, so the top activate main battle is for red Krillin, so ignore that. It's the bottom activate main. And this just says for 2 generic energy, which is the only cost, draw a card, then choose up to one of your opponent's battle cards, ignoring barrier, and give it minus 25 for the turn. So it's barrier removal for red, but it's not just red. It is for any single deck that is struggling for barrier removal. It is just 2 energy, no leader lock, no energy color leader locked of any kind. And you also draw, which is like great for these cards, because in the past, like you get a card that reads this way, normally it doesn't draw because they feel like the effect's too strong. Otherwise it would be overbalanced. Well, this set, they gave a lot of extra cards that do a lot of good things that then replace themselves, only making it that much more better. So you're not hemorrhaging your hand to gain resources. This is not getting a body on board. It's removing a body, but for the fact that it's not a body with barrier removal, they're giving you a draw on it as well to still make it worth playing. So there are probably a lot of decks that could use this. Again, like it's on color red, right? So for red control decks, this is also very big. Red control decks that don't want to play bodies early, that want to simply survive and turtle up into the late game, this deck helps you do that depending on the matchup. And again, generic. Like, I know it might feel weird throwing a red deck in a red card in a non-red deck, but if your deck needs this, if you just needed this effect on anything, this is a card to look into. So I love how generic they made a lot of the cards in this set. Like, it can go into a lot of things that don't match the color of the card. I just think it's huge. I think that's so cool. Okay, moving on. Great Ape, Son Goku against Struggle in the Devil's Castle. So this is the green SR Z battle from the Lucifer archetype. Of course, Z cards and SRs are always usually generic for the color, right? So that's exactly what this one is. This is a 20k deflect blocker. I know I'm kind of blocking the power of some of these. Hopefully you already know what it does, or it's okay that I'm saying it. But deflect blocker 20k. When this card is played, choose up to 3 of your opponent's cards at the cost of 4 or less and KO them. Green has plenty of removal. It is the main color that can get rid of barrier the easiest. Everything seems to have an effect that's just point and click, remove something. But green doesn't necessarily have wider removal. Red kind of has it in the form of, hey, choose your opponent's board minus this. Regardless if it actually gets rid of bodies, it can, if the proper setup is there, if their board is the way it could be, for wide minuses to board wide, cool. But green is kind of missing that. There's the old cooler SR, Unison cooler SR, the Golden Frieza, that when it's played, if it has 5 or more markers, right, it's a board wipe. There's not a lot of those or anything similar in green. So this is a way to do that, but like smaller, which is huge. It's not the craziest thing. I mean, this would be so broken if it simply said 3 of your opponent's cards, no matter the cost. But we're in a meta where Arinsu exists, and there are a lot of decks that spam 4 lesses. And especially like in kind of those middle turns where your opponent maybe isn't there in their curve to play, 5, 6, 7, 8 costs, and they've been trying to beat you down with these 4 lesses. Again, it's 2 energy, it's 2 Z energy. This is sort of an expensive card in green, but more than likely you're playing this in a deck with a green Unison, and you're playing Dormant. So you have to sequence this correctly to where you are not going to die because you paid 2 and 2 for a green card that doesn't necessarily end the game. Luckily, this is a blocker. It has an activate main battle once per turn to Spirit Boost 1, and you switch this to active mode. So it can be a dual attacker, it can be a single attacker, and then a double blocker on your opponent's turn. If they don't have the removal for this, on curve, or they need to use the removal for something else on your board, then you can dormant and block with this and potentially restand it to block the second attack, effectively ending your opponent's turn. I'm not going to tell you that's going to happen all the time. It's just the fact that this card's existence allows for certain green decks to have that sort of out on any given turn. I think it's fantastic. It's not overpowered, but you can look at it and go, oh, I know certain situations, X, Y, or Z, when this is the best and when to use it. And I'm glad green now kind of has this to help shape its Z deck toolbox. There are a lot of good cards in the green Z deck, Broly, Bojack, removal, double strike type cards all built into one. But it needed something different than those, and this provides green with that. So, and again, I love that you get the most out of this card if you are a green unison deck. So I know most decks want to have a green unison, and obviously there's unisons in your Z deck, but ones that are like underpowered, have been power crept, and also still rely on like a main decked unison, then again, hopefully this is a tool that helps you feel more confident in that deck, whatever it may be. Great card, love it, not overpowered, simply does a good job, and I love that Bandai kind of realized that this is something that they could make to help green in some way, shape, or form. Okay, going back to another red card, teaser, spoiler alert, the red cards in the set are really good, specifically for that one red Broly deck, because they decided to make some more money. They wanted to really increase their sales, and so they made a pushed Broly deck in a color that a lot of people like to play. So this is Bio Broly Imposing Behemoth. This is the SR in red. What a card. Okay, what a card. So immediately you're thinking this is a 3 energy, 3Z energy play. Yes, and believe it or not, that is a good cost for this card because of what it does. In the red Broly deck, I'm sure you guys know, I kind of went over in the Broly overview about a week or so ago, that there is a Broly that you can make it swing twice, and each time it swings, it minuses the cost on this by 1, which would make this a 1/3 in the red Broly deck. So that's, first off, insane that they allowed that to happen, because 1 and 3 for this card should be illegal. It is a board wipe. When it's played, it minuses everything on your opponent's board by 30, not through barrier. Absolutely phenomenal. It's 30k, dude. It's going to get a lot of stuff. So this can help you turn the tide, essentially, given the matchup. It is a repeatable red Senzu Bean effect stuck to a double strike body with strong positioning. So just going ahead and reading the card. It is unique, obviously, no surprise there. Deflect, it needs to land, it needs to hit the board. Double strike blocker. It is a permanent that if there are 2 or fewer battle cards on your opponent's battle area, this card cannot be removed from a battle area by your opponent's skills. That is the best way for something like that to read. Can't be removed from skills, can't be KO'd, can't be returned to your hand, whatever. Reads the best. But that clause of if there are 2 or fewer battle cards on your opponent's board, this would be a strong form of protection in general on a card that doesn't inherently try to wipe your opponent's board the moment it's played. So if this works and you wipe your opponent's board because they don't have anything through barrier, then your opponent has to find a way to play 3 battle cards to then try and make this card go away. What an absurd sentence. And then the craziest part is in that middle line, I said a repeatable Senzu Bean. Okay, so this auto is when your opponent's battle card is played or attacks. There is no once per turn attached to this. Why? I have no idea. When your opponent's battle card is played or attacks, your leader and this card get +5 for the turn. So, every single time a battle card is played by your opponent or attacks, 2 instances, right? Your leader is beamed up and so is this card. So offensively, when you play this, if you sequence it where this hits the board and then you swing with something else and your opponent goes Android 17, this card becomes a 35 double and your leader becomes a 20. And in Red Broly, a leader in which you could give your leader barrier and dual attack, you're effectively turning your leader into a 20k dual that discards 2, draws 4, instead of a 15k, which you guys know just how valuable that is. And then defensively, if your opponent starts with a wiped out board, and your opponent goes, here's my first card, okay? You're a 20k leader, 35 blocker. I'm going to swing with the 1 card I played. Your leader is now at 25, and your blocker's at 40k. If this wants to get to the 3 bodies in one single turn, right? Get to the 3 bodies so then they can remove this. You go body, body, body. And your leader goes up to a base 30k defensively. Again, a sentence that should be illegal in Dragon Ball Masters when playing a red deck. I cannot believe they made this card. It is a hell of a tool for red in general, but for red control decks that can survive into the late game where this cost and Z energy cost is not all that insane because these other red decks are not going to have access to the Broly that makes this cheaper, this is going to be an awesome card. Again, why'd they print it? We'll never know. Oh, wow, another red card. Crazy, right? Who would have thunk? All right, the Broly SR regular battle card, S is Broly Indiscriminate Destroyer. This is a generic red boss monster. You play it for 2 red, so it's not generic for every color like some of these other cards. 2 red if your opponent has, and I should say, it's not red leader locked or locked to this leader specifically. If you're a red multi-deck and you charge enough red, this is a card you can play. If your opponent has 3 or more energy, draw a card, always good, play this card from your hand, and then place up to 3 red extras from your drop under this card, and then choose one of your opponent's battle cards with 35k or less and KO it. So draw, removal of anything less than a secret rare, and then of course if you play enough red extras and then in your drop, you can just put them underneath. Its other activate main is place 3 cards from under this card in their owner's drop. So in the red Broly deck that just came out, this card is absolutely broken. We understand that. But in any red deck now, you allow it 1 activation of this activate main of either to restand it for another 30k swing, or minus something through barrier 30k. So any red deck or multi-deck, whatever, that can charge enough energy, you are giving it a 2 energy, draw 1, remove 1 thing 35 or less, and then remove something through barrier 30 or less. Or simply 2 30k swings. But that seems so, like, compared to what else you could do with it, doesn't seem like the best value play. But still, again, what an incredible card. Double removal, including a barrier card, draws. So this is a needed card for red because in general, the color itself struggles with barrier removal. You're paying 2, 3, sometimes for like not a body to remove something through barrier. You get a big body on top of barrier removal here. It's going to feel great for a lot of red decks that needed something like this. But in the best of the color, including the red Broly deck that this came out in, it is going to feel absolutely insane. My favorite part of this card as well is the support that it brings for red extra Broly from Sand Showdown BT15. That deck right has the permanent that you can only play Broly character cards, and this sure is that. So thank you for this card. It takes the deck from utter garbage on fire to kind of just garbage, but I can't quit that deck. It's so much fun. So huge card. Now I believe our last card is, yes, we're going to go over my favorite secret rare in this. Look, the Broly SCR is very good. The Goku Black SCR is very good. But I think if you've noticed a little bit of a theme in this video is that I love how generic some of these cards, because the more generic they make stuff, and everything has been so leader locked and color locked and cost locked or whatever over the last handful of years, when they realize they can't keep making generic stuff, because then every deck becomes, what is the best shell to put in the best cards of any color, or best color combinations, whatever. But they've kind of realized, they've done that for so long, they can probably sneak in some of these cards that are very generic to help out with not only the new decks that they are releasing in the set, but like some of these cards really do take older decks from, I mean, it's like, you know, from a set or two ago to 5, 6, 7 sets ago, that they can help take them to a new level of competing simply with an additional card or two. I think that's so cool. And I think it's something that Bandai needs to continue leaning into, along with the way they continue to churn out legacy support in their sets, along with their anniversary box products. So, Baby Avenger of Ruin. This is the white SCR from this set. It is a burn SCR for any deck regardless of color. regardless of color, because if you look at its activate main to be played, it is 3 generic energy, the only cost. Play this card from your hand. The simplest wording you could ever imagine. So every single deck now, regardless of color, I mean, you're always playing Beaston, you're always playing Evil Sand in blue and black. But SSB Vegeta from a number of sets ago, Realm of the Gods, is 4 red, and it's just not worth it, especially in the color red. And Cell Max can only be procced in certain decks that have the best synergy with specifically cards that allow you to pop it yourself, to burn your opponent for either game or just get them close to game. So this deck allows you to not only burn your opponent, it is if your opponent has 2 or more, so you're not burning them for game with this, but getting them from 2 to 1 is still such a massive job. And sometimes getting them from 3 to 2 is huge because it gets them in double strike range, where a lot of decks, again, even without Champa, have access to cheap doubles that your opponent always has to worry about. So, and then again, this in white, which has a lot of leader buff abilities, like for almost nothing, it can get your leader swing to 35, 40, 45k. And so if you burn them from 2 to 1, like, your opponent has to save a negate for the leader. So again, very, very cool. But it doesn't just burn a life. It buffs your leader 10k for the turn cycle. Again, leader buff in white. And then, I mean, first off, in general, like a 10k buff like Light in the Dark from SS4 Vegito and similar stuff, like, they're huge for decks that lack defense, which is something that white does. It allows you to have some form of late game defense that it was just sorely needed. You know, not much else to say than that. Like, a plus 10k for an entire turn cycle is a lot of free value defensively. It's also a board wipe. So it board wipes the way that white does. It chooses everything and flips it to hidden mode, not flipping it back again via an effect. So it doesn't get through barrier, but again, wipes the board the way white does it. It also has an activate main once per turn that you can take one of your opponent's hidden mode cards, put it at the bottom of their deck to draw one. That's once per turn as long as this card survives. It's probably not going to survive more than a turn cycle, but the option is there to do that. So it does all these things. It is a 40k dual attacker blocker that buffs your leader 10k for the turn cycle, burns your leader, your opponent's life if it's 2 or more energy life. God, I can't talk. Just so excited about these cards. And then board wipes as well as draws. So this is an amazing card. This is the last card I'm going to talk about. Could I have found 2, 3, 4, 5 X amount of more cards that I could show you and gush about and tell you about how awesome they are? Absolutely. I'm sure. I'm actually, little call to action here. Tell me in the comments, what other cards do you think no one is talking enough about? What other cards do you look at and you read over and over and over again, and it makes you go, how is this card existing? I cannot believe they made it. Why do they do this? That's what I would love to hear. But that is the end of this video. Guys, thank you so much for all the love. Thank you all so much for the appreciation. Please like, subscribe, tell your friend. And I say to do that for every content creator in Masters, because of how important it is that we continue to expand the content creator pool, as well as create this rising tide raises all ships vibe in the community, because we just simply need more. We need more. We deserve better. And that's kind of my main goal of why I even started the channel, right? Is just, I want to hear more people talk about Masters. I'm sure there's plenty of people out there who do too. And if it's easy enough for me to get on here and record videos, I'm going to go ahead and do that. You guys make it easy as well. So I appreciate you. Thank you for stopping in and checking out this video. And we will see you in the next one.